Slap yourself in the face. Crank up some heart-pounding music. Consume copious amounts of caffeine. All could be clues given in the winner's circle round of the pyramid game show for the subject, things people do to stay awake while driving. Deep into a moonless night, somewhere in southwest Montana, on the last legs of an 8-hour journey home from a weekend long-distance relationship rendezvous, I discovered the best way to stay awake. Turn off your headlights. On that stretch of highway, the towns are few and far between, and rarely were there any other cars at that time of night. With no other sources of light for miles in any direction, the terror of complete and instantaneous darkness at 70 miles an hour was a jolt that certainly got my heart pounding. I don't really recommend this remedy for driving drowsiness, and I didn't keep the lights off for more than a second or two, but it got me thinking then and now about the importance of headlights, about how important it is to have a light unto our paths as we try to make our way home. In that brief blackout, the dire truth of the situation was revealed. The truth of any situation where you're trying to get somewhere but you can't see where you're going. There are 3 options. 1, you procure some kind of lamp to shed light on the situation. 2, you pull off to the side of the road, which means you stop progressing. Or 3, you crash. This is true for each of us individually. It's also true for any civilization as a whole. Author, historian, theologist, and social critic G.K. Chesterton offered this prescient metaphor a century ago. Suppose that a great commotion arises in the street about something, let us say a lamppost, which many influential persons desire to pull down. A gray-clad monk who is the spirit of the Middle Ages is approached upon the matter and begins to say, in the arid manner of the schoolmen, "Let us first all consider, my brethren, the value of light. If light be in itself good," and at this point he is somewhat excusably knocked down, all the people make a rush for the lamppost. The lamppost is down in 10 minutes, and they go about congratulating each other on their unmedieval practicality. But as things go on, they do not work out so easily. Some people have pulled the lamppost down because they wanted the electric light, some because they wanted old iron, some because they wanted darkness, because their deeds were evil. Some thought it not enough of a lamppost, some too much. Some acted because they wanted to smash municipal machinery, some because they just wanted to smash something. And there was war in the night, no man knowing whom he strikes. So, gradually and inevitably, today, tomorrow, or the next day, there comes back the conviction that the monk was right after all, and that everything depends on what is our philosophy of light. Only what we might have discussed under the gas lamp, we now must discuss in the dark. In more ways than one, it feels like we're living in the dim dystopia of Chesterton's vision. But I'm reminded that darkness has always hunted and haunted us. In a 2,000-year-old letter to the Romans, Paul laments, "When they knew God, they glorified him not as God. Neither were they thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools." We call our era postmodern, but it's just another incarnation of what could more aptly be described as post-light. To be sure, we do have plenty of synthetic light. We generate untold gigawatts to illuminate our dwellings and kindle our pixels. Any plane passenger with a window seat after dusk can attest to the universe of glowing orange galaxies sprawling across the globe below as our cities steadily increase in intensity and immensity. The devices sewn into our palms ensure us that we can always find our way to the refrigerator at any hour of night. But this isn't the kind of light that is pulled down by mobs. And ours is not the kind of darkness that a flashlight app can break through. Around the time of World War I, a British explorer named Ernest Shackleton wanted to be the first to traverse the continent of Antarctica. His plans were derailed when his ship, the Endurance, became lodged in ice off the coast. He and his crew were forced to make camp in the frozen wasteland for 18 months before finally being rescued. But the bitter cold, boredom, and monotonous diet of penguin and seal meat weren't the worst of what they endured. During winter at the bottom of the world, there are stretches of time when the sun does not rise. It's called polar night. It's disorienting, disconcerting, and downright debilitating. All of the early polar explorers on both poles reported this exasperating lack of light to be the most difficult part of their expeditions. And all of them succumbed to some degree of madness. Imagine a darkness so deep that you can't see your own hands for weeks. Imagine the isolation, the directionlessness. Without light, you not only lose sight of what's in front of you, you lose sight of yourself. You lose your own physical identity. In a very real sense, light is more important to life than even food or drink. Is it any wonder that the worst place to end up in any of Jesus' parables is outer darkness? He would know. Darkness hovered densely during every precarious deed leading up to and including his death. The betrayal, the treason, the trial by the Sanhedrin. Even the crucifixion, which occurred at midday, was shrouded by 3 hours of total darkness. His executioners had pulled down the most luminous lamppost of all. After they pierced his hands, they couldn't see their own. That 3 hours of darkness was an echo of the 3 days of darkness that fell over Egypt during the penultimate plague before the first Passover, after Pharaoh refused yet again to hearken unto God. That too was a darkness so thick that it could be felt, in which they saw not one another. It's notable in these cases that darkness is both a precursor to and a consequence of evil. Some deliberately bring about the darkness. It's much less revealing of what they'd like to do. Violent crimes all occur disproportionately more at night, not to mention what else is done in concealment behind closed drapes and locked doors. But I think what's even more ubiquitous is unwitting darkness. The toppling of the lamppost because, as Chesterton alluded to, we thought it not enough of a lamppost, or too much. Basically because we knew better. Because surely modernity has brought us a better way of seeing the world. Because an ideology tells us that we just need to smash something, or has taught us to perceive darkness as light and light as darkness. And now we're left at war in the night, with each other, with ourselves. Things are not working out so easily in the murky chaos that ensues without light. Chesterton also said this: a modern morality can only point with absolute conviction to the horrors that follow breaches of law. Its only certainty is a certainty of ill. It can only point to imperfection. It has no perfection to point to. The promise of a utopia that could be shaped in the shadows is in shambles again. Darkness has brought what it has always brought: corruption, fear, distrust, lack of direction, confusion of personal identity, and diffusion of national identity. For all intents and purposes, we can't see one another. What we might have discussed in the light, we now must discuss in the dark. Whatever stamina we have left for those discussions, wherever those discussions are still allowed to happen, the topic must be, what is our philosophy of light? Astronomy textbooks and biblical creation narratives are in agreement that there was darkness upon the face of the deep, and that the first discernible event in our known universe was the formation of light. Let there be light was a fortunate turn of events for both the cosmos and the human beings that would eventually come to populate a pale blue dot out in the Orion arm of the Milky Way parcel of that cosmos. For they too would be blessed with a light that's separated from the darkness. It would be a blessing not just of photons that would reflect into their retinas to map out an image of what's before them, but a divine cognizance that would reflect into their souls to map out the image that they were made in. They would receive not just a sun to brighten the days, but the Son of God to light the way, the true light that lights every one of them, the light by which they can see the path, the way home. Perhaps the most well-known verse in the Bible is John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. But if we read on from there, we can see what this means in respects to our discussion about light. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. He that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already, because he hath not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. And this is the condemnation, that light has come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. For everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. But he that doth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest, that they are wrought in God. So Jesus' passion and purpose are not to condemn, but to save. There is condemnation spoken of here, but the condemnation isn't making a mistake in the light. It's seeking out the darkness. It isn't stumbling on a curb. It's tearing down the lamppost so that no one can see where they're walking. The condemnation is loving darkness, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Outer darkness isn't a place we're sent for punishment. It's where we go when we refuse to come out of the darkness for so long that we can no longer bear even the smallest glimmer of light, let alone the sublime radiance of God. Just as the pupils in our eyes increase to allow more light in, we, as spiritual pupils, can increase to allow more light in. The more light we let in, the better we can see, the further we can discern truth through dim conditions. In this illusion of people being dilated pupils, I can't not shout out the LA underground hip-hop group Dilated Peoples and one of my favorite songs to run or work out to, fittingly here titled, Show Me the Way. MC Ira Science proclaims in the second verse, it's your world. You can write the line you live your life on. It's heavy, but you're strong. Just hold on until that light dawns. Stepping out of the shadows, we may have to squint for a minute. The light might show us some things that we need to clean up, but it will also show us the splendor of what we've been missing. Like emerging from a dark, windowless cabin in the woods to behold a glorious mountainside bathed in warm golden sunlight, teeming with trees waving lightly in the fresh mountain air, rivers of living water flowing refreshingly at our feet. Will the West, a society built on the principles of enlightenment, but currently doing 70 on a country road at 2 a.m, turn the lights back on? Will it step out of the shadows? I can only pray. We're certainly not going to stop on the shoulder. Thankfully, no matter what time or place we live in, every individual has access to the light that has come into the world, so that whoever believes in him may not remain in darkness. Light, after all, is infinitely supreme to its pitiful antithesis. The polar opposite of polar night is called midnight sun. In the towns of northern Scandinavia, Russia, and Alaska, the sun doesn't set between mid-May and mid-July. I don't know how they get their kids to sleep, but I do know that never-ending light is highly preferable to never-ending darkness. I'd fathom that the people that live above the Arctic Circle prepare for the long, dark winters by stockpiling firewood and light bulbs. The beautiful thing about light is that it can always break through the darkness. Darkness, on the other hand, has no such power. There's no such thing as a dark bulb.